Creative Unconscious and the Alchemy of Urban Analysis. This is a story of Central Park City and Mannahatta. Journey to the Center, when Central Park heals New York City. The rich journey of this island city is symbolic of one's journey to self. Once upon an island, in a faraway time, there was a sacred ceremonial island called Mannahatta. Lovingly tended by the Manhattan Lenape Tribe for over 1,000 years, living and working with deep respect for the land, nature's cycles, and in harmony with the seasons. The European colonists arrived in the 17th century and brutally introduced the notion of land ownership, stealing and savaging this beautiful island and her beloved peoples. This 1776 map shows us the body of the island, the contours, with beautiful hills, valleys, streams, ponds, and woods of Mother Earth. An island where the rivers meet the sea. She was gridded with machine-minded efficiency. At the very center of the island was captured a slice of the original island called Central Park. What is it like to live in an intensely gridded urban island, completely surrounded by a moat of water? For those who don't understand not loving New York, I can explain it in one sentence. It's one thing to visit a circus, and it's quite another to live in a circus. New York can be as exhilarating as it can be excruciating. A green reservoir oasis at the center of the city, surrounded by the relentless urban grid, shown in this image on the left. The image on the right is the same, except this time it is the human experience of that condition. The human experience of the intense urban world surrounding Central Park, a vital and replenishing public green space at the interior. Ironically, most New Yorkers turn inward to the center of the city to get away from it all, closer to self. Space of reflection, play, and dreaming, Central Park holds secrets of what New York might have been and still could be. the sacred space of the unconscious of the city. Nesting islands at the heart centers. Modern-day Manhattan sits at the heart and center of New York City. Central Park sits at the heart and center of Manhattan. The now filled-in rectangular reservoir sits at the heart and center of Central Park. Quietly embodied within the plan of Central Park is a metaphorical island of Manhattan. This long, thin, green-painted island inside Central Park is defined by the main drive continuous loop going through the park. This metaphorical island is similar in shape and is the same proportion of 1 to 5 as Manhattan Island. I discovered this island floating within Central Park. Through a series of paintings. In this painting, I am showing only the main drive and the crosstown roads. I began to see sort of a long and thin shape floating in the park, like an island with bridges connecting to it. I began to explore more precisely this island within Central Park. So this time it's a black line ink plan of Central Park showing precise detail of all paths and roads. Have you ever wondered what Manhattan might have looked like if it wasn't gridded? The designer of Central Park, Frederick Law Olmsted, was disdainful of the gridding of the city, and he therefore might have been imagining a romantically idealized plan for New York City, quietly embodied in his Central Park design. When you compare this metaphorical island within Central Park with the island of Manhattan below, making them the same length, we can see more clearly how the road structures of the park mirror the road structures of the city. The perimeter road going around the island of Manhattan is akin to the main drive defining the metaphorical island in Central Park. The vertical red lines in this drawing show the crosstown streets, both in the city as well as through the park, both serving the same purpose of getting traffic quickly across town. The crosstown streets segment each island similarly both in the city and in the park, offering yet another parallel between the two. Let's look now at how ever more parallels might play out on the stage of the city. Broadway as New York's Grand Promenade. Let's look now at some parallels, mirroring, and metaphors between New York City's Broadway and Central Park's Grand Promenade. Remembering that Broadway in New York City is synonymous with theater, and that promenading is about urban theatricality of seeing and being seen, socially, politically, and otherwise. This is one of many aspects of theater of the city. The diagonal black line in the lower drawing of Manhattan is the Bowery and Broadway. In the top drawing of Central Park, the Grand Promenade physically stops at Bethesda Fountain, but visually continues on to Belvedere Castle that sits at the southwest corner of the rectangular reservoir. You can also see that Broadway pauses at the southwest corner of the rectangle of Central Park. Broadway and the Grand Promenade parallel each other similarly, closely allied to due north, the Sacred Way up the island of Mannahatta. Broadway was formed from a natural condition, a soft lime streak that became a Native American trail. The long-time historic route of Broadway was respectfully included in the Manhattan grid. It is also interesting to see how the reservoir above and Central Park below also line up. Well, we've already seen that when you make the metaphorical island of Manhattan the same size as the literal island of Manhattan, the two rectangular spaces at the center of each island line up. We've also seen how Broadway and the Grand Promenade parallel each other, both literally and metaphorically, and can now see in this drawing how they both have the same starting point on their respective islands. Let's have a look at superimposing these two islands over each other to view the synchronicities. And here now is the integration of the Grand Promenade sequence along Broadway, with the Grand Promenade shown in red and the Bowery and Broadway shown in green. I might surprise you in saying that it's possible that Olmsted did not consciously design Central Park to this level of detail. Here, I believe that the conscious and unconscious mind, as well as the collective and creative unconscious, were working together simultaneously. Nobody designed the nesting islands of Manhattan, Central Park, and the reservoir. It was a collective series of decisions made over time by different ages, different people, for different reasons, which collectively make up an unconscious and archetypal pattern. Frederick Law Olmsted may well have tapped into this spirit of creativity in his design of Central Park. These current Central Park discoveries may be a continuation of this same spirit of synchronicity. In the collective and creative unconscious, this black ink plan of the core of Central Park looks strangely similar to a city plan. Could this possibly be Olmsted's vision of a romantically idealized plan for what New York could have been? By reinstating the now filled-in rectangular reservoir at the center of Central Park, we create a beautiful space in which to place this metaphorical island that I call Central Park City. Here is the plan of Central Park City placed within the reinstated reservoir of Central Park. At the center of Central Park City is yet another reservoir in which can be placed the original island of Manhattan called Mannahatta. Here sits the island of Mannahatta at the heart center of Central Park City. Let's have a look at what all of this would look like three-dimensionally. The 1930s aerial photo helps us to see this. Totally by chance and synchronistically, I discovered this extraordinary photograph showing the filling in of the reservoir, just at the point where the fill-in was a long, thin island in the center. It resonated richly and synchronistically with everything I was already discovering. Placed within the reservoir is the Central Park City Island, and at the center of the Central Park City Island is the reservoir in which the island of Mannahatta is reinstated. This once sacred island of Mannahatta would be planted with the seeds of the original island. It would be a sacred space at the very heart center of Manhattan for pause and reflection. Discovering Central Park City has been absolutely invaluable for many different reasons, but it is an idea that can live richly in the heart-mind. It does not actually need to be built. More importantly, this whole journey has led us to the discovery of a sacred ceremonial site for the beautiful lost paradise of Mannahatta and her beloved peoples. Mannahatta, at the very center and still point of New York City, a sacred place of remembrance for the island of Mannahatta and her beloved peoples, a memorial to the Manhattan Lenape Tribe and all tribal nations. This infinitely inward journey symbolically embodies the journey to the center of self, finding the still point within, the golden light of one's heart center, the beautiful, sacred, ceremonial island within. When the garden heals the city. We are now moving from the invisible realms of the Central Park alchemical flask onto the urban stage of the city, and the magical marriage of the Grand Promenade and the Broadway urban stage, but not before some very dark days. In the 1980s, New York was a war zone, developers booming and millions despairing. A huge upsurge in homelessness, the scale of which truly shocked New York. Unemployment, loss of earnings, homelessness. People selling whatever they can just to stay alive. Numerous professions, city agencies, and city services all rushed to help, each in their different ways. In architecture schools, we gave housing projects and public space projects. reclaiming public space from crime and drug wars as one way of tackling the multitude of problems. I took a group of fifth-year Carleton University architecture students to New York to develop design proposals for the 5 Broadway squares. These design proposals and the Central Park City project were published in the AA files in 1992, and I am told was handed out to 10 generations of Columbia University architecture students, many of whom went on to work in New York as architects. There seemed to be a growing collective interest in the health and well-being of cities internationally through the rejuvenation of public space. Hindsight teaches us that architects internationally were well placed to be doing this design research in the 80s and 90s, ready with plenty of ideas for the early millennia when suddenly there exploded a passion for public space. But not before New York's Negredo had yet to face ever more deeper, darker days. The World Trade Center disaster brought the city to its knees, to ground zero. The total shock and collective city-wide grief was hugely overwhelming. It brought people out into public space together, sharing grief together, opening hearts and minds, reminding them of the human value of public space. Central Park came into its own again as a significant gathering place in the city for collective mourning, healing, and unity. With death comes times of deep inner reflection, enabling new perspectives to arise in their own time. During these dark days, something began stirring. From these embers, Phoenix was rising. The strength found in these spaces grew into an unstoppable force of nature. After the total shock of 9/11 that was palpable in New York City for 3 to 4 years afterwards, Phoenix began rising in the form of a passionate movement for public space. Numerous city agencies like the Urban Development Corps, City Planning Department, and commercial businesses all joined forces to plan and create dignified public space for the people of the city of New York. By 2010, the 5 Broadway squares shown in this painting had been renovated for the people of the city and were inhabited instantly. Union Square had been a significant place of mourning for New Yorkers. Seen here, now in brighter times and newly renovated. And Madison Square, at 23rd Street and Broadway, neighbor to the famous Flatiron Building. Cafe tables and chairs have taken over where traffic once ruled. Harold and Greeley Square, at 34th Street and Broadway. With traffic barred and cafe tables installed. Here we are at Times Square, 42nd Street and Broadway. In 2010, testing the waters to see if people really would come out into public space. Here we are witnessing how the once traffic-laden Broadway is transforming before our very eyes into New York's truly grand promenade. And here we are at Columbus Circle, 59th Street and Broadway. The once massive traffic circle has been reduced down to 4 lanes, and a garden created at the center that is amazingly popular. Despite its unusual location at the center of a roundabout. Here we have a place for New Yorkers and visitors to pause and reflect. Vital public space has been carved out along Broadway, honoring the sacred way and journey through the city. The body and soul of the city, the beauty in the beast. Body and soul of the city. Central Park as womb of the city. Central Park City as embryo of New York City. Once upon a planet. Like all international cities, New York is a melting pot of numerous countries and cultures internationally. Some of these include neighborhoods like Little Italy, Chinatown, Spanish Harlem, Little Germany, Harlem, Lower East Side, Hell's Kitchen, Little Korea, and many more. Representing communities and cultures from numerous countries internationally, New York has also been perceived as a microcosm of the world. We have seen how, in many different ways, Central Park is a mirror and microcosm of Manhattan, and how in some ways Manhattan is a microcosm of the world. So many different countries of the world represented in New York City. The story of Manhattan Island is a microcosm of the story of planet Earth. What humans have done to the island of Manhattan has also been done to Mother Earth. The worldwide scale of colonization now threatens the entire existence of planet Earth, who has been equally gridded and trodden. Here is a dream that I had whilst making this video. believe this dream is speaking of Mother Earth, ancient indigenous wisdom, and the balancing of male and female energies for the future of the planet. If the totally gridded island of Manhattan can not only survive, but also learn and change, and hear messages from the artificial nature landscape of Central Park in the 21st century, then possibly there is hope for the rest of the planet that is equally caged, trapped, and trodden, and in desperate need of hearing and learning from nature. Perhaps there may still be hope.